in shaping their life and ensuring that they have their human rights. I think that since the Universal Declaration was adopted just after World War II, at a point of devastation, what you saw is that it inspired very practical changes in governments from the United States to Europe to really change people's lives in terms of ensuring civil and political rights and socioeconomic rights. And what we see today, one of the articles, Article 28 of the Universal Declaration, says that everyone is entitled to a social and international order in which the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration can be fully realized. The issue of the right to employment is one of those rights. And what we see today is that unemployment across the world has become a major problem, including in our country.
Well, in a big way.
And we have the phenomena of precarious employment, people employed in jobs that are part-time, that are they don't know whether they're going to have a job the next month, at very low wages. And there's an international social order and economic order which drives the unemployment and the poverty and inequality that we see globally. And so I think it's very relevant, and I think that it's something that should be taught in every school, because I think that the rights enshrined in the Universal Declaration, many of which are enshrined in our Constitution, are still important for us today.
Are we doing well in South Africa in terms of recognizing the rights, in terms of giving people a voice, in terms of giving meaning to these rights and ensuring that people actually understand and are able fully to enjoy the benefits out of these rights?
I think that we have a great constitution, as everyone will tell you. We have an excellent legislative framework in many ways, but I think that in the realization of the rights, we have a long way to go, as our hearings on water and sanitation across the country have shown.
What is our biggest challenge? Why is it that after all that, after fighting for liberation, after 1994, we still have a long way to go? What is our biggest challenge right now?
I think our biggest challenge is that we haven't sufficiently addressed the social engineering of the past, which the massive divides, the fact that the majority of the poorest were in the homelands and in the so-called informal settlements across our country. The majority were female. And that continues to be the case in our country today, because we've also not looked at, I think that there's a number of challenges. I think that there's a contradiction between some of our human rights commitments and some of the trade and macroeconomic choices which have created unemployment and poverty and inequality.
Which one is an example of that?
An example of that is the General Agreement on Trade in Services, which globally allows for the privatization of human rights such as water, education, healthcare. It changes the framework. It says that water, for example, is not first and foremost a human right, which is what the United Nations has asserted very clearly. The people of the world have asserted that it is a human right. It's the universal commons. But in terms of the trade agreement, in terms of the trade decisions, such as the General Agreement on Trade in Services, it allows for it to be seen as a commodity. And the key question there is the notion of profit, of making water something that mining companies, for example, can use and pay very little for. In fact, pay less than households pay per kiloliter, and pollute the water and no responsibility or accountability
from there. Just in terms of marking International Human Rights Day, what's happening in South Africa today?
Today, actually, we're holding the final hearing on water and sanitation. There's many events across the country to celebrate this day, to commemorate this day, from schools to universities to communities. The Human Rights Commission is holding its final hearing on water and sanitation, because we believe that water is life, sanitation is dignity, and that's critical. So, recently with the Lenasia matter, for example, there was a threat from government that it would cut off water and sanitation. That's a fundamental right. Fortunately, sanity has prevailed.
Yeah. What is our challenge, though, with the provision of water? I was in Colesberg recently, and there's a battle with water there. Sometimes the water is unavailable, even in a hospital, which is a very central part of the town. What is it that makes it impossible? Is it a question of resources? Is it a question of ability? Why is it impossible to provide water in South Africa?
It's a combination of factors. It's the fact that, for example, you have a dam. In the first hearing we had in Mpumalanga, you had a dam where companies could actually access the water. Communities right next to that dam couldn't access the water. So it's a question of priorities. It's a question also of those in government being able to value the lives of those who are poor, and that informing our policies and our implementation. It informs then how government as a whole, not just local government, but local, provincial and national government work together to ensure the delivery of these human rights, so that it's not just seen as something that often very poor municipalities, yes, there are 6 wealthy metros, but there's a significant number of very poor municipalities with very little capacity, with very little resources, having to negotiate with companies which deal with water, waste services, electricity, etc., which have far greater capacity than they. So they don't have there's no equal ground on which to negotiate contracts.
And there's no support
and
from
the business
province.
The business contracts, which are supposed to be on every website, local government website, there should be transparency around that. We found that these contracts, which businesses are being contracted by local government to provide which services, is not available on any website across the country, including the wealthy metros. I'm not sure if it's changed while we've been having these hearings, because we've been raising it in every one of the hearings.
Okay. Pregs Govender is Deputy Chairperson of the Human Rights Commission, joining us this morning talking about International Human Rights Day, but also our challenges as a country in providing some of the basics to the people of South Africa. You may want to